There was a lesson if you would have sought me, I would have showed you there was something I need to teach you before you go to the next battle, before you go to the next territory, before you go ahead and try to take that next promotion. There was actually something you should have learned here, and I ain't there. You can go ahead, but I'm not going with you. The reason why you might be pushing out the presence of God, that glory from your life. Number one, you're seeking other gods. You're seeking, and this is what they did. They started worshiping other gods, other idols. It starts out as there's this word called syncretism, and that's where it starts for Israel every time, and that's where it starts for us. Syncretism is where we borrow the customs and the culture, and we kind of add it to our own custom, culture, and religious practices. So they still have the temple. We still offer sacrifices, but then we also have Baal because he actually helps us out too. And I got Asherah too over here. We got these poles for Asherah because we like her too. And she offers some things that we like in our life. And so I'll continue to go to the temple, but I'll continue to look at porn. I'll continue to go to church, but I'll just cheat on without no one knowing. I'll continue. So it's this syncretistic practice. And Jesus said, you can't serve two masters. God can't occupy that space anymore. You're shoving glory out of your life by inviting idols to take space in your heart. Ezekiel chapter 14, verse 6, God says, therefore say to the people of Israel, this is what the sovereign Lord says, repent and turn from your idols and renounce your detestable practices. Let me give you a definition of an idol. An idol is anything more important to you than God. Anything that absorbs your heart or your imagination more than God. In anything that you seek to give you what only God can give you is an idol. Okay, and by that definition, like your family and children can be an idol. Your career or making money can be an idol. Achievement and success or popularity can become idols. Your romantic relationship or even friendships can become idolatrous. Your competence or skill can become an idol. Secure and comfort living could become an idol. Your beauty or your brains can become an idol. A great political or social cause can become your idol. So even success in your particular ministry can become your idol. An idol is whatever you look at and you say in your heart, if I have that, then I'll feel my life has meaning. That if I have that, then I'll feel significant or successful or secure if I just had that. That is an idol. And as you invite that into your heart, you're driving out the glory of God from your life. Tim Keller says in his book, Counterfeit Gods. If you have not read that, put that on your reading list maybe for next year, 2024 reading list. Counterfeit Gods by Tim Keller. Let me read you a section of his book. He says, to contemporary people, the word idolatry conjures up pictures of primitive people bowing down before statues. Our contemporary society is not fundamentally different, though, from the ancient ones. Each culture is dominated by its own set of idols. Each has its priesthoods, its totems, and its rituals. Each one has its shrines, whether office towers, spas and gyms, studios, or stadiums, where sacrifices must be made in order to procure the blessings of the good life it promises and ward off disaster. What are the gods of beauty, power, money, and achievement but these same things that have assumed mythic proportions in our individual lives and in our society? We may not physically kneel before the statue of Aphrodite, goddess of beauty, but many young women today are driven into depression and eating disorders by an obsessive concern over their body image. We may not actually burn incense to Artemis, the goddess of fertility and wealth, but when money and career are raised to cosmic proportions, we perform a kind of child sacrifice, neglecting family and community to achieve a higher place in business and gain more wealth and prestige. One of the ways that God, His glory, the manifest presence, could move Jehovah Shammah, not be in our life anymore, is because idols have taken space in your heart and you've shoved out glory. The second reason is you're in the wrong place. And we see this in Israel as well. I don't know, have you ever How many of you have ever stepped out of the will of God and his presence did not go with you in that place? Anyone want to admit that? Okay. You just kind of, it could have been a boyfriend. It could have been a job. It could have been a little, like a practical place you stepped in. You said, man, I stepped out of that. I stepped out of it. And you look back with 2020, there are places, like places where God says, I'm not there. That you can actually walk out of the glory. There's a few examples of this in the scriptures, and I don't have enough time to dissect them all, but you can go read. The first example I have is in Joshua chapter 7, the battle of Ai. It's spelled AI, but it doesn't mean artificial intelligence, okay? The battle of Ai is a place. It was actually the battle that happened right after Jericho. Very, very famous battle where the walls of Jericho came tumbling down after the worship cry and shout of all the Israelites. Well, what happened was Joshua does not seek God about the next battle to go into. He rushes into that, and he sends his army to Ai, only to get routed, beat, and like chased off by a lesser, inferior opponent. And the reason was they actually had taken some things that they weren't supposed to take, some of those consecrated things in Jericho that they took into their camp. And I think the learning principle here about getting into the wrong place is don't get ahead of God. You can get into places, go to places, and that's a fill in there. Don't get ahead of God. There you go. That's a place. You can actually go ahead of God and leave him, because God sometimes, he's like, I wanted to do something in that season, you left and you got ahead of me. There was a lesson if you would have sought me, I would have showed you there was something I need to teach you before you go to the next battle, before you go to the next territory, before you go ahead and try to take that next promotion. There was actually something you should have learned here, and I ain't there. You can go ahead, but I'm not going with you. You can miss the glory of God in your life because you got ahead of him. Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 3 says the vision is for a future time. That if it seems slow in coming, don't get ahead of God. Don't rush it. He says, wait for it. Wait patiently for me. Stay here in my glory. You don't want to go without the glory of God, for it will surely take place. It will not be delayed. There's another example of maybe just being in the wrong place. A great example of that is Abraham and Lot. Both of these two communities, actually, both these people, Abraham and Lot started being blessed by God in the land he had given them and multiplied them and their servants and their land and their kids and their cattle. Everything was just, but it got so blessed, both of them, that the land could not support both of them, and there was some fraction between them. So Abraham comes to Lot and says, Lot, hey, we shouldn't fight between us. Man, there's more of this land. Why don't you just look up at the land wherever you want to go. You go ahead and take it. I'll give you first dibs. Lot looks up. He looks at the land, and over on one side, he says, well, that looks good. That's green and lush, and the land is fertile. I'm going to take that one. And so he pitched his tent in the land of Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay? So the learning principle here about being in the wrong place, looks may be deceiving. And some of you, the glory of God has been shoved out of your life because you're in the wrong place. You looked up. You saw something that was glittering, that was shiny, it looked good, and you went and pitched your tent somewhere where God was not. Okay? So this is just some examples that, hey, how is God, the glory of God, being shoved out of our life? You have the presence of God. If you're a child of God, he lives in you, he dwells in you, but there is something so much more powerful and greater, the glory of God, that you can walk in and manifest in your life. And when he's shoved out, it's because maybe some other idols have actually occupied space in your heart, shoving out God's glory. Maybe you got ahead of God, or you went somewhere because of the way it looked, and you're in the wrong place. God's just not there. And then here's the third reason why we might shove out the glory and God moves out. You're in rebellion. You're straight up. You're in rebellion. This is the cycle of all these three things of the cycle of Israel. It's where they're at. There's two reasons why Israel rebelled. The two reasons Israel rebelled all throughout history of Israel. It's still the same reasons why we rebel today, you guys. The same two reasons why anyone rebels God. Number one, we're rebelling against God's standard, or we're rebelling against God's saving. Those are the only two. That's rebellion. We're rebelling against God's standard. Well, I don't want to do it that way. I'll do it my way. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that part. I'm gonna do it this way. Or we're rebelling against God's saving. We're like, I don't need help. I can do it my own. And we just haven't got to that place of lowness or humility or brokenness yet. This is a dangerous place to be in, especially if you know God. If you know the standard of God and the saving of God, and yet you are rebelling against his goodness and truth anyway, that is a scary place to be in. That's where Israel got. In fact, it was a cycle. That's where they continued to get. They're there again in Ezekiel, but this is a great picture of this is in the life of Samson. Samson was a judge of Israel, a man who actually the glory of God rested so powerfully on him. It's what gave him supernatural strength. I mean, there's like superhero stories written after this guy because of the glory of God that was on his life. But he got complacent and comfortable in his rebellion. Look what it says in Judges chapter 16, verse 20. His wife cries out, "Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you." And when he woke up, he thought, "I'm just going to do as I did before. I'll shake free." But he didn't realize, look what it says, that the Lord had left him. He didn't realize that the glory that was there ain't even there anymore. And some of us, if we're not careful, we can get to places, just wake up one day, think that it's going to be there when you need it. When the crisis comes, when your kid comes home and says, well, this is what I'm going to do with my life, or you get into some spiritual warfare and you think you can tap into a reservoir that has run dry for years. He didn't realize the Lord, the glory of God isn't there. He moved out. See, the problem isn't where God is. Oftentimes it's where we are. And mankind has a tendency to drift from the presence of God.